Okay, question number 19 here, and we're talking about the volume of some of the advanced shapes. So the first thing we need to remember is that the formula for these are going to be given on the formula page at the beginning of the exam. Now, we're told the shape's made from a hemisphere, which is half of a sphere, and a cone. We're told that they both share the same radius, so this value here is going to be equal for both of them. And we're also then told that the height of the cone is 10 centimeters. We're told that the overall volume of the cone is 270 pi, and we're going to leave it in pi terms, particularly because this is on the non-calculator paper. And then we're asked to calculate the overall volume of the shape, including the hemisphere. So the first thing we're going to have to do here to be able to access the hemisphere is use the information we have to find the actual value of the radius. So, going to the front of our examination paper, we're going to find the volume of the cone formula, which is 1/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by r squared multiplied by h. So let's substitute in the values that we do know there. Well, 1/3's 1/3. Pi we're going to leave in terms of pi. R squared is the thing that we're trying to find later on in this manipulation, and we know that the height is 10. What we're also told back in the question is that the overall answer to this formula is 270 pi. So we now have an equation form that we're going to be able to find r for. So let's go through this then. The first thing I want to do, I want to get rid of this third because it makes it look complicated. So I'm going to multiply by 3 because 1/3 times 3 is a whole one, so effectively it can stop existing. So I'm going to have to times this side by 3 as well. So 270 multiplied by 3 is 810 pi. 1/3 times by 3 creates our 1, and we still have pi times r squared times 10. So let's carry on and do this then. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel through the pi on both sides, so I'm going to divide by pi on both sides. So I'm now left with 810 is equal to r squared times 10. I'm then going to divide by 10 to get rid of this, so I've got to do that on both sides. So I've now got 81 is equal to r squared, and if we know what r squared is, to find r we're going to find the square root. So r is equal to the square root of 81, which we know could be plus or minus 9, but as this is a dimension in a shape, it's not going to be -9, so we can say that r is equal to +9. What we can then go back and do now that we've got the value of r is we can use this value inside the sphere. So we go back to our formula page and we know that the volume of a sphere is given as 4/3 times pi times r cubed. Now we have to remember that this shape is made from a hemisphere, which is half of a sphere, so I'm going to start by halving my formula. So instead of 4/3 I'm going to have 2/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by r cubed, and then I'm going to substitute in our value of r, which we calculated a moment ago using the cone. So over here we've got r as 9, so that's now going to come in here as 9 cubed. So what I now have is 2/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by 9 cubed, which means 9 times 9 times 9, which I know is 729. And then I want to try and get rid of this nasty fraction here, 2/3. So I want to find 2/3 of 729. So let's quickly do some long division here to try and work that out. So we're going to do 2/3 of 729. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find 1/3. So let's do 1/3 of 729. 3's into 7 go twice with a remainder of 1. 3's into 12 go 4 times exactly, and 3's into 9 go 3 times exactly. So I now know that 1/3 is equal to 243, so 2/3 is going to be twice that, so 486. Let's take that back to the equation we were using. So I now have 2/3 of 729 is 486, and I've still got my pi. So what I now have is a value for the volume of the hemisphere in terms of pi. Back in the original question we also had the volume of the cone in terms of pi, so my final piece of the work here is going to be to find the total volume. I'm going to add the volume of the cone which is 270 pi, with the volume we've now calculated for the hemisphere, so the volume of the hemisphere as 486 pi. So we end up with 270 plus 486, giving us 756 pi. Don't forget the units, centimetres cubed.